A month before she died, someone else did the exact same jump. Same bridge, same men. Nothing happened. There's a video on Instagram from May. A woman named Estefany Gonzalez, mid-air, arms out, Superman pose, swinging off the same bridge, held by the same instructors, who would later be charged with killing Maria Eduarda, Rodrigues de Freitas. 90 people jumped that day in May. 90. Nobody died. Nobody got hurt. Estefany posted her clip, smiling, the wind in her hair, and moved on with her life. A month later, the exact same operation, the exact same bridge, the exact same 2 men threw Maria Eduarda off without a rope attached to her body, and she fell 130 feet to the ground. I keep starting and stopping trying to figure out how to open this video, because every angle I try makes the same point land differently, and none of them make it land easy. So let's just sit with that one fact for a second before we go anywhere else. This wasn't some fly-by-night operation that had never run a jump before. This wasn't their first rodeo. People had been doing this exact jump, off this exact bridge, with these exact men, for who knows how long, and it had apparently been fine. Until it wasn't. And once you understand that, the whole case changes shape, because the question stops being, how could something this reckless happen, and becomes something much harder to sit with? How does something that's been working fine, again and again and again, suddenly not work on one specific Saturday for one specific 21-year-old woman in front of a crowd, on camera, while people are screaming at the top of their lungs that she doesn't have a rope? I want to walk you through this whole story today, not just what happened, because if you've been anywhere near social media in the last couple weeks, you already have a sense of that. I want to get into the stuff that's actually come out since, the stuff that complicates the easy version of this story, the parts that I think most coverage has rushed past because they don't fit neatly into evil men killed innocent girl, or tragic accident, nobody's fault. Because the truth, from what I can tell, lives somewhere genuinely uncomfortable in between those two stories. And I don't think you can understand what happened to Maria Eduarda without sitting in that discomfort for a while. Let's start with who she actually was, because I don't ever want to get so deep into the mechanics of a case that the person at the center of it becomes an afterthought. Maria Eduarda Rodrigues de Freitas. 21, she'd just finished a degree in physical education and sports management, and she was already working as an instructor at a gym near Sao Paulo called Pano Bianco Academia. Not someone dabbling in fitness as a side interest, someone who had built an actual career around it, who'd put in the work, who showed up every day to help other people get stronger and feel better in their bodies. The gym posted something after she died that I think captures who she was better than any official biography could. They said her presence illuminated the environment, that her memory would remain in their hearts forever. They shut the gym down for a day, not because they had to, because they couldn't imagine opening it without her there. She had a fiancé. The reports say he became physically ill when he found out what happened. Not metaphorically upset, actually sick. The kind of news that hits your body before it hits your brain. Her mother wrote something on Instagram afterward that I've reread more times than I probably should have, about wanting to hug her daughter 1,000 more times, about what an honor it had been for 21 years to be called Mom by this particular person. That's who was standing on that bridge on June 13th. Not a reckless thrill seeker who ignored warning signs, a young professional on a Saturday, trying something 100 other people had apparently already tried safely, at a place that was clearly set up to look legitimate enough that she trusted it. She even posted about it before she jumped, a photo on the bridge, smiling, captioned with something playful. Basically, who's the crazy person who let me come jump off a bridge? The kind of joke you make when you're excited and a little nervous and have zero reason to think anything is actually going to go wrong. That post is still up. I don't know if her family has thought about taking it down or if they've left it up on purpose. Either way, it's there, frozen. A 21-year-old being playful about something that was about to take her life. Okay, let's get into the mechanics, because I think understanding exactly what rope jumping is and isn't actually matters a lot for how you judge what happened here. People keep calling this bungee jumping online, and it isn't. And that distinction is doing real legal work in this case, so it's worth getting right. Bungee uses an elastic cord. You fall, the cord stretches, you bounce. The energy dissipates through that up and down rebound, smaller and smaller until you stop. Rope jumping is different. You're on a rope, not elastic, and instead of bouncing, you swing. This big pendulum arc, the energy bleeding off through air resistance, and the swing itself rather than a bounce. Here's the part that actually matters, though. In Brazil, bungee jumping has an actual registered safety standard through their national standards body. Real regulation. Rules about who can sell the equipment, who can operate, what the inspection requirements look like. Rope jumping has none of that. Not less regulation. None. A bungee jumping expert who runs an international consulting firm was asked to weigh in on this case. And even he was careful to say he's not a rope jumping specialist specifically, because as far as he knows, there simply isn't a recognized safety standard for this activity anywhere that he's aware of. Not in Brazil, not really anywhere. Think about what that means in practice. He put it about as plainly as you can. The barrier to entry is basically nothing. Anybody with a harness and a rope and enough confidence in what they think they know can set up shop and start taking people's money. No license required, because there's no licensing body. No inspection required, because there's nothing to inspect against. And the bridge itself, this thing has a name, the Skeleton Bridge, Ponte do Esqueleto, an abandoned railway crossing about 90 miles north of Sao Paulo that hasn't carried a train in 30 years. It already had blood on it before Maria Eduarda ever got there. A cyclist died falling from that bridge in 2024. 2 other people were hurt there before that. The local government in Limeira, the city responsible for the area, had reportedly been writing letters to the federal government since the start of this year, asking them to secure it, inspect it, do something about who has access to it. Nothing happened until June 13th. And on June 13th, 100 people were expected to jump that day. 100, paying somewhere around $25 to $32 US a ticket to an operation running under informal brand names, Entre Cordas and Evoy, that as far as investigators can tell, was never a real registered company at all. Now, here's where it gets genuinely strange, in the way that makes this case hard to file neatly into a box, because this wasn't their first time, not even close. Remember the influencer I mentioned at the top, Estefany Gonzalez? She did this exact jump, off this exact bridge, with these exact men running the operation, a full month before Maria Eduarda died. She posted it. Superman pose, same as Maria Eduarda wanted. She said there were 90 participants that day in May alone. And after Maria Eduarda's death, Estefany came forward in a series of videos to talk about what her own experience had actually been like. And what she described doesn't sound like a sketchy fly-by-night scam at all. She said the organizers specifically told participants not to distract the rope operators while they were working, that they didn't want anyone breaking their concentration. She said there were multiple safety checks of the equipment, that the operators shared responsibilities, like there was some kind of system, some division of labor, some structure. Her conclusion, when asked directly about what happened to Maria Eduarda, was honestly kind of haunting in its simplicity. She said she doesn't really know what happened. Sit with that for a second, because I think it's actually the most important piece of testimony in this entire story. Here's someone who did the literal same activity, with the literal same people, a month earlier, and walked away believing she'd experienced something reasonably careful. Multiple checks, a structured process, people being told to stay focused. And then, weeks later, those same people threw someone off the same bridge with absolutely nothing attached to her. That's not the profile of an operation that never had any safety process at all. That's the profile of an operation that had a process sometimes, that worked. Sometimes, until the one day it catastrophically didn't, for reasons nobody involved seems able to actually explain. So let's go through what we actually know happened that Saturday, because the sequence matters enormously here. Maria Eduarda wanted the Superman jump, the one where two instructors lift you up by your arms and legs and toss you out and over the edge in that classic flying pose. Two of the three men later charged in this case, Luis Felipe Feliciano Egorov and Vitor de Freitas Goncalves, are the ones seen in the video lifting and throwing her. A third man, Maicon Fernandez Sintra, was also present and has also been charged. For context on who these guys actually are in their regular lives, because it's relevant to how unbelievable this whole thing is. One of them works as a civilian firefighter. One has a tour operator's license. One works in film post-production. These aren't street hustlers running a con. These are guys with real jobs who built a side operation doing this, who'd apparently done it enough times, with enough apparent structure, that an influencer walked away from her own jump, describing multiple safety checks and a system of shared responsibilities. They carried Maria Eduarda to the platform. They lifted her, and the rope that was supposed to secure her, the thick rope you can actually see in the footage, was lying on the ground behind them. Coiled, untouched, not lost, not missing, not somewhere else on the bridge. Right there, visible, within feet of where they were standing. People around them started screaming before she even left their hands by some accounts. The audio that circulated has people shouting in Portuguese, "The rope, the rope. She doesn't have the rope. Stop." One of the men later told investigators, and this is honestly one of the details that I keep turning over in my head, that he genuinely did not register what was happening, that he only understood something had gone wrong once he heard people screaming, and that's when he left the platform and rappelled down to where she'd landed, where he says he found police already there and a healthcare worker performing emergency aid. That healthcare worker was an off-duty nurse named Riza Dias. She was apparently right there in the crowd, ran to Maria Eduarda after she hit the ground, and found her still alive, conscious. For some amount of time after a fall from 130 feet, this 21-year-old was still there, with a stranger holding her, trying to keep her calm. She didn't survive. She was pronounced dead at the scene shortly after. Two of the three men ran into a wooded area near the bridge. They were tracked down by helicopter. One had reportedly changed his clothes in the time between the jump and being found. A third man was arrested separately. Brazilian authorities described this as catching them in flagrante, in the act, essentially, fleeing the scene of what had just happened. Now, the men's explanation, through their lawyers, for why this happened, is genuinely one of the stranger things in this whole story, because it's not really an explanation at all. They say they don't know who was supposed to attach the rope that day. Not, "It was my responsibility, and I missed it." Not, "He was supposed to do it and didn't." They reportedly told investigators they couldn't say whose job it was. Couldn't explain why the safety check apparently never happened. According to reporting, they appeared disoriented when questioned, unable to walk investigators through the basic division of labor that, according to Estefany Gonzalez's account from a month earlier, was supposed to exist. Their defense attorney has emphasized, repeatedly, that this is the only death this group has had in years of operating, that these are highly experienced people, that they're in shock over what happened. I want to take that claim seriously for a second instead of just dismissing it, because I think it actually cuts both ways in a way that's worth sitting with. If it's true that this operation has run for years without a fatality, that's either evidence that they generally know what they're doing and this was a genuine, isolated, catastrophic failure, the kind of thing that happens once in thousands of repetitions of a process that usually works. Or it's evidence of exactly what that Bungee expert was describing when he talked about how these systems slip. You get away with skipping a redundancy check enough times that it starts to feel optional. The system was never actually built with backups. It was built on people remembering to do the right thing every single time. And eventually, statistically, on some Saturday, somebody doesn't. He used an image that stuck with me. You can ride a horse backward your whole life and never fall off. Doesn't mean it was ever actually safe. It means you got away with it every time, until the one time you didn't. I want to spend a minute on what real safety structure is actually supposed to look like here, because I think it clarifies exactly what was missing, and it comes from that Bungee expert's breakdown, which I found genuinely illuminating, even though he was careful to say rope jumping isn't his specific field. He talked about two concepts that govern safety in his world: competency and redundancy. They apply to both the equipment and the people running it. Competent equipment means gear rated well beyond what the activity actually requires, properly designed for the specific use. Competent people means people who've actually been trained, who've gone through some kind of structured program, who know what they're doing because they were taught it, not because they picked it up by watching. Redundancy is the part I think actually explains what happened on that bridge. It means backups at every single point where something could fail. Not one harness, two, or one harness with two separate attachment points. Not one rope connecting you to the structure, two. Not one carabiner, two. So that if any single point fails, there's another one holding. And redundancy in procedure means a second person checking the first person's work. Someone puts the harness on, somebody else verifies it's tight. Someone clips the rope in, somebody else double checks that connection. Not because the first person is incompetent, but because everybody, no matter how experienced, has an off moment, gets distracted, gets a question shouted at them at the wrong second. And the whole point of redundancy is that a single human mistake should never be enough, on its own, to kill somebody. What you see in that video, by every description of it, is a single point failure, with no redundancy catching it. One person, or maybe nobody specifically, responsible for attaching that rope. No second check. No system flagging that the thing closest to her body, the actual line that would have saved her life, was sitting in a coil on the ground instead of clipped to her harness. The instructors themselves, notably, were attached to safety lines. They had their own redundancy. They just never extended the same protection to the person they were about to throw off a bridge. Let's talk about the charges, because this is where the case gets legally interesting in a way I don't think most people following along on social media fully understand. The three men are charged with what's called homicide, with eventual intent under Brazilian law. And I want to walk through what that phrase actually means, because it's doing a lot of heavy lifting in this case, and it's easy to misread it as something it isn't. It doesn't mean prosecutors believe these men wanted Maria Eduarda to die. Nobody thinks that. What it means is that they're alleging these men knowingly engaged in conduct that carried a real, known risk of death, and proceeded anyway, essentially accepting that outcome as a possibility they were willing to live with. A Brazilian defense attorney broke down the legal distinction in terms I think are genuinely useful here. In Brazilian law, there's a difference between knowing there's a risk and not caring whether someone dies because of it, versus knowing there's a risk, but genuinely, in your own conscience, believing and hoping it won't happen, while doing your best to prevent it. The first one supports a homicide charge. The second one is closer to negligence, and the gap between those two legal categories is, according to her, extremely difficult to prove either way in court. Here's the part that I think most people covering this case skipped over, and it matters. The reason these three men are sitting in jail right now isn't purely a reflection of how strong the homicide case against them actually is. It's partly a function of Brazilian procedure. You can only be held in preventive detention before trial if the underlying charge is one that, if proven, would actually carry prison time. Negligence charges in cases like this typically don't. They often result in something closer to 1 to 3 years, frequently served without actual incarceration at all. Homicide, on the other hand, if proven, carries 6 to 20 years. Which means, according to that same defense attorney, charging this as homicide may have been, at least partly, a mechanism to justify keeping these men locked up while the investigation continues, regardless of whether homicide ultimately turns out to be the legally correct framing for what happened. She predicted, pretty directly, that she expects this to eventually get reduced to the negligence framing, because proving actual intent, even the lesser accepted the risk version of intent, is going to be a genuinely hard bar to clear in court. I don't know if she's right, but I think it's important to understand that the charge these men are currently facing and the charge they'll ultimately be convicted of, if convicted at all, might end up being two very different things. And that gap, 6 to 20 years on one side, potentially no actual prison time on the other, is enormous. There's a piece of this story that came out after the initial wave of coverage that I think reframes the whole thing, and it's this. The bridge is being torn down. A local councilwoman confirmed it. The federal government, the same federal government that had apparently been ignoring requests to secure this bridge since the start of the year, has now authorized its demolition. The mayor reportedly provided the equipment himself. I keep going back and forth on how to feel about that. On one hand, obviously, good. Nobody else dies on that bridge. On the other hand, it's hard not to read that decision as a kind of unintentional confession. You don't usually tear down a structure unless you've concluded it represents an ongoing danger, which raises the obvious, uncomfortable question. If they're willing to demolish it now, what changed? The bridge was exactly as dangerous in January, when Limeira was reportedly sending letters asking for inspections, as it was in June. The only thing that changed is that somebody died on camera, and the video went everywhere. That's not a satisfying answer for Maria Eduarda's family, I'd imagine. It suggests the system was capable of acting the entire time, and simply didn't, until the cost of inaction became visible to the entire world. I think the honest version of this story, the one that doesn't flatten into something simple, looks something like this. You had an unregulated activity in a country where rope jumping specifically has no safety standard at all to operate under, happening at a location with a documented history of fatal accidents that local government had been trying, unsuccessfully, to get federal authorities to address. You had an informal operation, no registered company, run by men with real day jobs who'd apparently developed enough of a process, enough credibility, that an influencer walked away from the exact same experience a month earlier, describing multiple safety checks and shared responsibilities among the operators. And then you had one Saturday, in front of 100 paying customers, where whatever process normally existed simply didn't happen, where the rope sat coiled on the ground instead of attached to a 21-year-old woman's body, where nobody can apparently explain whose job it was to prevent that, and where the people closest to her, the ones who should have caught it, picked her up and threw her anyway. Negligence that killed someone is still a kind of homicide, in the plain sense of the word, even if the legal system in Brazil ends up drawing a finer distinction than that. Whether it rises to the version of the law that keeps these men in prison for years, or the version that doesn't, is going to be decided by people far more qualified than me to make that call, working through evidence I haven't seen. What I keep coming back to is something that Bungee experts said almost in passing about how these systems fail. It's never usually one catastrophic decision. It's a series of small erosions, skipped checks that didn't cause problems the first 10 times, shortcuts that worked fine until the exact moment they didn't. An entire operation built on people doing the right thing every single time with no actual backup if they didn't. And eventually, statistically, somebody doesn't. On June 13th, that somebody was Maria Eduarda Rodrigues de Freitas, 21 years old, a degree in sports management, a job she loved at a gym that loved her back, a fiancé who got physically sick when he heard the news, a mother who is now writing on Instagram about wanting to hug her daughter one more time. She posted a joke about a crazy bridge jump before she did it. She had no reason to think she wouldn't be home that night. The bridge is coming down now. The men are in jail for now, facing charges that may or may not stick in the form they're currently written. The city is reportedly preparing legal action against the federal government for ignoring warnings that had been sitting in writing since the beginning of the year. None of it brings her back. All of it is happening because of what was done and not done to her on a Saturday in front of a crowd, on camera, while people screamed about a rope that was sitting right there, 3 feet away. The whole time. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Does this look like homicide to you, the way Brazilian law is defining it? Or is this a tragedy that happened because an entire system, not just 3 men, failed to build in the kind of backup that should have made this impossible in the first place? I'd really like to know where you land on this one, because I'm honestly still not sure where I land myself. If you're new here, subscribe. We go deep on cases like this every week, and we try to actually sit with the hard parts instead of rushing past them. See you in the next one.